In this episode of the Happy Hustle Podcast, we're talking to Mr. Jim Fortin. He is talking to us today about brain-based scientific transformational psychology. Specifically, we get into Neuro, Persuasion, and how you can leverage it as a force for good to ultimately increase your income and your impact. We're going to be diving into this episode of the Happy Hustle Podcast. Do you want blissful balance in your personal and professional life? Great. What's up, guys? My name is Kerry Jack, and I want to help you happy hustle a life you love, one full of passion, purpose, and positive impact. I'm a lifestyle entrepreneur, a professional model / actor, a digital marketing specialist, a podcast host, author, a biohacker, an eco-warrior, a martial artist, a hippie cowboy, and a humanitarian. My goal is to educate, inspire, and entertain you to live a life of passion, purpose, and positive impact. It is time to happy hustle your dream reality. Yee! All right, my man, Mr. Jim Fortin, welcome to the Happy Hustle Podcast. I am super excited to rock the mic with you.
Thank you, Kerry. It's a pleasure to be here. Especially after our little talk earlier, I'm thrilled to be here with you and the audience today.
Yeah, me too, man. You are definitely good energy and really an awesome human, a happy hustler at that. You're a podcast host who has one of the top 0.01% podcasts in all of the world. You've shared stages with people like Tony Robbins, Robert Kiyosaki, Dr. Phil, and many others. And your mission's simple: to help people transform their lives by transforming their identity at a subconscious level. And we're going to talk about that today, as well as neuro persuasion, how you can actually become more influential using pressure-free persuasion so you can essentially increase your income and your impact while also not losing your soul, right? And happy hustle throughout. And I'm excited to dive deep into your story, but also just to share your wisdom with our audience. But before we get into all that good stuff, Jim, what is something interesting about yourself that not too many people know?
Well, I think a lot of people know this, though, but not in your audience, is that I have worked with a real shaman for 28 years now, meaning my sister's husband, my brother-in-law, would be a shaman like you would find in the Amazon, that you would go to for spiritual growth, spiritual healing. One of his mentors was a woman named Doña Maria Sabina. For many years, she was the most powerful healer in Mexico. All the presidents went to her. Walt Disney went to her. The Beatles went to her.
Wow.
I've spent decades at his side. And candidly, I've used a lot of what I've learned from ancient wisdom and shamanism to bring it into business. So I think that's going to flow well with what we're talking about here. And a lot of people in my audience know that, which is why they follow me, but your audience doesn't know that. And, you know, I dress, so to speak, normal. So you wouldn't see me on the street and think, oh, okay, that dude apprentices with a shaman. But my whole reality is wrapped around personal and spiritual evolution and evolution and growth for all of us.
Wow. Yeah, very interesting. And, you know, for those people who are unfamiliar, even with the term shaman, which I don't think there's many, but just define it for us.
Yeah, shamanism actually is the oldest system of thought on the planet. Anthropologists can trace it back 70,000 years. Shamans, in today's understanding, would be, for example, like medicine men in Native American tribe. They are the healers, they are the seers, they are the wise men. People would go to them for healing and for growth. During Mayan times, they were the advisors to the Mayan kings. Many people today, this day and age, well, you know, I live in Sedona, okay? So you have people saying, oh, I'm a Sedona shaman. The shaman will never tell you they're a shaman. A real shaman will never speak of that in public. A real shaman will not do a podcast. I mean, my brother-in-law's life story has been written. It sold tens of millions of copies around the world. It was ghostwritten under somebody else's name, and he was fine with that because he helped. And I would love to have him on my podcast, and he won't do it. He doesn't do anything in public. But a shaman basically is defined as one who can see in the dark, one who lives between worlds, meaning between the spiritual world and the physical world.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, so much wisdom has been passed down from shamans, from healers, from these individuals. And that's, you know, how we evolved as humans oftentimes through the power of language and story.
Hang
What
on, you nailed it. You nailed it, Carrie. I don't mean to interrupt, but you
please?
nailed it. Most people don't know that is that
Yeah.
shamans are attributed with saving humanity because many hundreds of thousands of years ago, they could see where the herds were to find food, or they
Right.
could see things that other people couldn't see. So they used these abilities to help people exist and
Mm.
to feed themselves and to stay warm and protection. So very good understanding of that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, very rudimentary understanding in my capacity, but I'm excited to learn more from
Yeah.
you and soak it up because that's why I really am excited to go down this topic. Specifically, you're a master practitioner of NLP, right? Neuro
Right.
linguistic programming and a master hypnosis as well, right?
Right.
So you have so many different elements that you use in your coaching, your consulting, through your
Correct.
podcast, through your books. My question is, what got you into all of this stuff? Was there a catalyst moment that you could attribute this path to?
Yeah, I think it's an amalgamation of things, and I'll make this as short as possible, but many people can relate to this. I grew up poor, and I always wanted to be rich when I was a kid.
Mm,
Today, I'm financially very comfortable, and it's not that big of a deal to me.
mm,
But I was always chasing money, and right after college, I met a guy that was a sports celebrity. Started working with him. I ended up losing everything. The guy was a con man. I
ah,
did not know that. He basically went to prison twice after I knew him. I suspected after I met him he was doing some things that were perhaps illegal. Maybe I didn't know, and I wasn't privy to it. And I'm like, I'm going to move away from this guy. But I had all my money invested with him. I lost everything. I started waiting tables, and a friend walked up and said, "Here, you would like this audio tape." It was from a guy named Wayne Dyer. You ever heard of
mm.
Wayne Dyer?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And by the way, Wayne Dyer once told me, I knew him before he passed,
Oh, wow.
said to me, "I'll go anywhere, anytime, any place to meet your brother-in-law, the shaman." So
Mm,
when I listened to Wayne Dyer, it just fit. I mean, it's like putting on a shoe that fits.
yeah.
I'm like, this is it. This is my path. And I
Mm,
got started on that path, and I've been on it now for about 30 years.
mm,
And then after that, I got into, hypnosis and NLP and persuasion and influence and all those kind of things.
mm,
At this day and age, predominantly I work only in human transformation.
mm.
I do teach some business aspects as well, and I teach persuasion and influence for business ethically.
Right.
But for the most part, my signature program is called the Transformational Coaching Program, where we help people shift their subconscious identity to become consistent with the outcomes they want to create in life.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. I mean, what a story, and the fact that the late great Wayne Dyer, that's epic. He
Yeah,
For those people who don't know him, definitely go check him out. He's a legend.
he's a legend. He's got wonderful content. And
Yeah.
when I started listening to Wayne, it just resonated. And then I met my brother-in-law, and Wayne constantly talks about my brother-in-law's mentor.
Mm,
And so that's how I got to meet Wayne many years back in the 90s because he hadn't been on the planet now for about 10 years.
mm,
And it's just the path that I live from. Even though we talk about business, everyone here, I'll say this, everyone here, this is not dogmatic. It is not religious. Everyone here is a spiritual being, however you define that.
right.
But many of us put a dogma on it, whether it be Christian or Muslim or Hindu or whatever.
Right.
We put a label. But every one of us, you know what? Before you showed up on this planet, you were somewhere, and that's an energetic being, and that's physics.
Yeah. Amen to that. I mean, that's how you know, inside the Happy Hustle, one of our 10 alignments, I'm not sure how familiar you are, but the M in our soul mapping system is mindful spirituality.
Yeah,
And I consider myself a man of God. However, my dad was Catholic, my mom was Jewish technically, and I'm just
right.
was raised this religious mutt, will you? And I mean, I pray every day. I feel very connected, but I'm spiritual, not religious. When someone asks you your kind of affiliation, what's your response?
I would say I follow shamanism, spirituality.
Mm,
The thing about spirituality, even spirituality, people can dogmatize it and
right,
turn it into a religion.
right.
So, truthfully, they say the name, I'm going to use this word even though it turns a lot of people off in different places, but the word God.
Mm,
I don't use that word a lot. I usually divine mind, consciousness, because that's physics.
right.
But, people don't recognize the connections that we have.
Right.
And you live in Montana. And so we could say, well, I'm not religious at all, but I love fly fishing.
Yeah.
That is an experience
True.
connecting with nature right there in that moment. That
Yeah.
is divinity in that moment, but
Right.
we don't see it that way.
Yeah, I see it that way because I say nature's my church, so I go out in the woods and that's where I feel most whole and connected and to source, right? Whatever you label it as, this divine consciousness, I think is a beautiful term for it. Let's get
That's
things.
what, Carrie, that's a great word before you keep going is
Yeah,
source. We are all from source.
right,
Whether you believe it or not, everyone is from source. There's
right,
a source energy, which is consciousness. Physics proves all this.
right.
Everyone listening right now and you have an EEG and an EKG.
Mm,
These are bioelectromagnetic. It's magnetics. We are all that.
right,
And we are all a reflection of the source of the cosmos.
right.
But we think, oh, I'm Jewish or I'm Christian or I'm
Yeah.
American or I'm Australian. Yes, but you're none of that nonsense. It's
No,
human
yeah,
identity.
yeah,
You're so much more powerful than that, but most of us don't see it.
right. Oh, very well said. Let's get into some real tactical things. I always like to kick things off with
Sure.
a bang. You know,
Understood.
let's start off with just the biggest misconception that people have when it comes to human transformation and what may be holding them back. In your years of work, I'm sure you've seen common threads. What is the biggest mistake or misconception that people make that's essentially having them shackled to their story?
Yeah. Before we go there, I'm going to grab a book right here at the side of my
Please,
desk. I
yeah.
want to show you. Okay. There's a book that I had as a prop. It's on my desk. And I read this back in the 90s called Think and Grow Rich.
Yes.
You've heard of this, I'm sure. How come so many people read this book and they never become rich?
I don't know. Good question.
Let me explain why. The concept of content versus context.
Mm,
People consume content all day long. I grew up poor. My dad was a farmer and a mechanic. We didn't have any money. My dad made the equivalent of about $60,000 today with a family of 5.
mm,
So we didn't really have any money. So all I ever heard as a kid is we don't have any money. We don't have any money. We're poor. We're poor. We're poor. That became my identity subconsciously as a poor Texas farm boy. I put myself through college. I happy hustled. I worked 2 jobs, 2 degrees, 4 years.
wow.
Now, here's to answer your question is you can read all the content in the world. You can listen to all the content. You can consume every podcast in the world, but people get very little change. They gather information, but they don't get change. And the reason why, this is about growing rich. But I grew up poor. So my subconscious context was about being poor. So
Mm,
no matter what I read about being rich, even though it sounded good,
mm,
it wasn't consistent with my subconscious identity.
mm.
So until I changed my subconscious identity, everything that I read, and I've read over 5,000 books and
Wow.
many about wealth, would metaphorically bounce off. Why? Because it wasn't consistent. That's why you can walk out and tell somebody right now you can be a millionaire in a year. And I had a client in New York City. He was a billionaire many years ago, and he hired me to teach him persuasion and hypnosis. And he said, Jim, this was in 1999. He goes, I can show you how to make $1 million a year, easy. And I said, Raphael, I'm a hypnotist. I can't make $1 million per year. So literally, he was telling me a truism, and he wanted to help me. But my truism was because my identity, there's no way someone like me can make that kind of money.
Mhm.
So you ask about the biggest mistake people make. They think that consuming content and going to the big tall guy with the big teeth and all these kinds of things, they think these things are going to make a lifetime difference.
Yeah.
And they can make some difference. generally people are all fired up and they fall back in their old patterns again, because until you change and shift subconsciously, nothing will change for you.
Mm.
Can I add one more example here?
Please preach it.
Okay. I used to speak for an organization called the Learning Annex out of New York City. I was their national spokesperson for a certain event they had. And their headliners were Tony Robbins, Dr. Phil, Robert Kiyosaki, and Donald Trump. This is back, I don't know, 2005.
Mm.
When you speak at those events, you don't hang out and listen to the other speakers. You go, you do your thing, you speak, and you go to dinner with your friends. But one time I was backstage and I heard Donald Trump speaking. And he said in 1992, and this is no endorsement of Trump for anybody listening, it's not anything, it's just an example, okay?
Right.
So he said in 1992, he was dead broke. He was $3 billion in debt in 19 personal. And my thought was, how the hell do you be $3 billion in personal debt? This isn't business debt, it's personal debt.
Yeah.
So, okay, he's 3 billion. And today he's probably worth, I don't know, 3-4 billion. But the question is, how come he was broke in terms of his physical experience, but he's a billionaire again? Let's slow down there. This is for everyone. How come and how did he do that? He went from billionaire to upside down reverse billionaire back to billionaire. How did he do that?
I don't know. I'm hoping you tell me the secret, Jim.
Identity. Because even though his physical environment was broke, he didn't have any money, and his mind and his identity, how he sees himself, his self-image, he was always a billionaire. So we will always revert to the subconscious identity. The reverse case, this is how Mike Tyson in a career earned $330 million. And as of about 5 years ago, he was dead broke, and now he's got about 10 million. How in the hell do you squander 330? That's a lot of prostitutes and a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But see, he grew up the poor kid in Brooklyn. So even though his external environment changed, his internal environment did not change. So everyone listening, whatever your internal environment is, you will always live from that place or revert back to that place. Long answer, but hopefully that answers.
Yeah, very much appreciate the real world examples as well. And it makes sense when you explain it as you did. This is our subconscious brain and our identity, and it's our baseline pattern. I guess the natural next question, Jim, is how do
Harry,
we...
before you go, hold the question. I want to show you something.
Please.
So, to demonstrate this for everybody listening right now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you my cell phone, and it says I've got 25% battery. Okay. Now I'm going to go to my home screen. Now, right there, I can't see my battery percentage because it's a hidden icon.
Right.
The thing is this, the battery is always running in the background. Your subconscious identity, whatever you learned before the age of about 8 or 9, is always running in the background, even though we're not conscious of it. This is why we can say, I'm going to set the world on fire. And we try and we try and we try and we don't do it. It's because our subconscious identity works against us.
Yeah.
I apologize for interrupting.
Oh, you're good. Interrupt all day. I'd rather you talk than me. I mean, I'm soaking it up. And, we hear about this, right? Like, especially as a new father, I know the most important years of his life right now are being sculpted from 0 to 9, right?
Correct.
And it's something I feel like most people have heard it in some capacity. The question is, how do we break these patterns? How do we change our identity in a sequential manner? And I know this is what you get into in your books, into your courses, but give us just the high level steps if you can.
Sure, I can do high level and very quickly. There's two approaches. One would be a Freudian approach, meaning a mental approach. One would be a Skinnerian approach. B.F. Skinner, a behavioralist back in the 1930s, a behavioral approach. And so normally I start people in the Freudian approach, and that would be self-hypnosis. Now, self-hypnosis can be as simple as something we do all day long. You're even doing it right now as we're talking, and people listening are doing it as we're talking. You're talking to yourself about what you hear me and us talking about.
Mm,
You've got a dialogue behind the dialogue.
right.
So my self-talk as a kid was always money's hard, money's hard, money's hard, money's hard. The more that I say that with repetition, the more that I create neural pathways in the brain,
Mm,
which then derive my habits and drive my thinking. So therefore, I have conditioned myself. The operative word is conditioned to be somebody who works from the belief. That's what we call it. All the motivators. I'm not
yeah.
a motivator, but that's what people call it. You got to believe in yourself. Well, that's neural pathways in the brain. One way, a simple way, is self talk. Learn to manage your self talk.
Mm,
Muhammad Ali, I'm the greatest fighter who ever lived. I'm the greatest fighter who ever lived. I'm the greatest fighter who ever lived.
yeah.
It's not mumbo jumbo, psychobabble. Another way is behavioralism. And this is what I tell people, and this will apply to a lot of people listening. People don't want to leave their comfort zones. And the surest way to become wealthy is to get comfortable leaving your comfort zones.
Mm,
But see, when you leave your comfort zone, that is pain. So the brain is hardwired to move from pain to pleasure. So we don't leave the comfort zone because that scares the, can I say a bad word?
of course.
Scares the shit out of us.
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't leave the comfort zone. So we always stay in the comfort zone. The
Mm,
only way to get through that is adaptively, meaning to whatever you're afraid of, go do it because then you recognize, oh, I'm not afraid of it. In that moment, you're starting to shift your identity about that thing because you've literally learned it's not going to hurt you, it's not going to cause anxiety, and it didn't kill you doing it. So those are two approaches. Skinnerian's one, the psychological is the other, and they both kind of work in tandem as well.
yeah. Wow. I mean, and the truth is, this conditioning, it is ingrained in our neural pathways. It's
Correct.
ingrained in our body, in our nervous systems.
Yep.
And I know just from the little work that I've done, you have to almost go back and recategorize these traumatic events, these different, instances, these self-limiting stories. And like you said, learn to manage your self-talk to create new pathways and new identity. That's a great tactic. I like to do these I am mantras. I do them every day in the morning and in the evening. I don't know your take on them, but I'm curious to see.
Saint Germain, the I am discourse is what you say you are is what you are. And in deeper, profound spirituality, um, the name of God is I am.
Right.
Please
So
continue. Yeah.
okay, so I'm onto something. Obviously, that I knew there
Yeah.
was. So I wake up every day and I'll say I am the world's greatest happy hustler. I am focused and disciplined. I am, and I just get into my list of 10 things typically. Um, Now,
Harry, what works better though
yeah,
is you like steak, right?
yes,
So we talked about that. So
yeah,
if I showed you a menu of a steak and it's all written, or I showed you a picture of like a really good, I suppose, medium rare
right.
steak from one of the best steakhouses in the country, which one engages your mind more? The
Oh,
written word, which is
yes,
left brain, or the steak with the potato and the asparagus or whatever?
the visual. I'm definitely more visual.
So here's where I want to go is we can all think, most of us, there's a small percentage of the like 1% that can't. But affirmations are great, but what's stronger, the language of the subconscious mind is imagery. So
Mm,
we don't have to use the words, but when we imagine it over and over, so when Carrie imagines more people coming to him or healing, Harvard's done research on this, you can heal the body 2/3 quicker simply by using the power of the imagination.
wow.
So roll the imagination into your affirmation. So
Mm,
instead of saying, I'm like an amazing, happy, hustle husband,
yeah,
imagine what that looks like. The kids run, your youngest one running to you, your
yeah.
wife saying, I love you, and the trappings of that.
Mm.
Now you're programming with repetition your subconscious mind.
Yeah, wow. And you hear vision boards and stuff like that, and it's also, when I used to play sports more regularly and at a higher level, it was visualize how the game's going to go, right? And
Right.
you want to be in that moment and feel the feeling of victory, right? So you're completely in line with all of that.
Change that word though, Carrie. You said visualize. You said it twice now. Not
Okay,
everyone
okay.
can visualize per se, but what most everyone can do is imagine. Because the unconscious mind, subconscious mind does not know the difference between real and imagined. This is
Mm,
brain science. So
yes.
what you imagine over and over and over again, and again, there's been research on this, you create neural pathways in the brain. But
Mm.
what do most of us imagine?
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Apologies for interrupting your programming. But I have to tell you, the best investment you can make in yourself is one in which helps you acquires skills. You've probably heard people talk about, oh, just invest in yourself and you'll be successful. Yes, that's true to a degree, but you have to invest in skills that will ultimately help you achieve your desired results. And I think one of the best skills one can possess, be it an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur, is the sales sword. Really knowing how to sell, utilizing pressure free persuasion, which will make you more money and more impact. Now, if you want to know how to sell more efficiently and effectively, I just launched a sales course called The Proven Roadmap Process to Selling Millions of Dollars and helping you to increase your conversions guaranteed. And you can get access to this new sales course that the Happy Hustle is launching at thehappyhustle.com/sales. And if you act fast, you'll get it at the lowest price it'll ever be available because we are launching it and we want to gain amazing testimonials and social proof to further share this knowledge. So if you act fast, you can get it at the lowest price it'll ever be. That's at thehappyhustle.com/sales. Now let's get back to this episode.
Holy man, that shit's not going to work. That
Right.
fell apart. People are going to judge me. People are going to criticize me. People are going to
Right.
laugh at me. There's no way I can do that. I see that bank account. It's always empty.
Yeah.
Imagine, imagine, imagine. We literally are programming the brain when we do that.
Mm,
I'm
yeah.
sorry for hijacking you,
No,
Carrie.
again, man, I love learning from experts like yourself and just that simple frame or that switch of verbiage from visualize
Yeah.
to imagine, it's so much more powerful. Any specific application of this when it comes to persuasion that we can get into would be so relevant for the happy hustlers out there because here's why, Jim, and you know this, but everything in life is persuasion in my opinion.
Well,
Like,
the only thing you get paid for
right,
ever.
right, so we're persuading ourselves to get up on time or to go to the gym or our kids to eat their broccoli, our wives to go on date night or whatever, right? There's always a persuasion in
Yeah.
some capacity. Maybe that's not the best term for it, but I know you coined the term neuro persuasion, and I'd
Right.
love to get into unpacking that. Specifically, start with defining terms. What does neuro persuasion mean?
Neuropersuasion is basically brain persuasion because
Okay.
everything comes from the brain. Every decision you make is already made by this is research done at the Max Planck Institute in Leipzig, Germany. Every decision you make has already been made brain based before you even come to a decision analytically.
Mm,
Meaning, if I said, do you want this or this? Just two, I don't know, two
yeah.
things. If you want this or this,
Right.
you could go, well, let me think about it. Your brain has already made a decision about which one you're going to pick,
Mm,
even while you think you are making the pick yourself consciously.
mm,
Now, what I want to point out, I don't know where you got it, but that's an old bio because I did teach and I coined the phrase neuropersuasion, but I stopped doing all that about 6 years ago.
mm.
But we use it in everything that we do. So next, you're going to want to know what they are. What's persuasion? What's influence? Persuasion is tactics and strategies to lead people to a belief or to an action.
Mm.
Influence is having power over others with zero effort. So, for example, Martin Luther King, that would be one example, or even Donald Trump, has zero influence over a certain percentage of the population. I mean, he has a lot of influence with no effort. He can just speak and people listen. That is influence. But it could be JFK, it could be Biden, it can be Gandhi, it can be anybody.
Right.
That is influence. The only thing we'll ever be paid for is our ability to persuade and influence other people. Now, as we're talking about this, Carrie, I'm sure you're recognizing how important this is to grow your sales and grow your
Of
business. Are
course.
you not?
Yes.
Let me add something there. I just led you subconsciously to answer how I wanted you to answer.
Right. Micro
That's a
commitment.
hypnotic, huh?
A micro commitment, we call it.
That's that, yeah, that's a hypnotic principle.
Mm,
You know, I could even say things like I taught hypnosis for years and I still do. You know, Carrie, I wonder if you're starting to recognize how powerful persuasion and influence are.
mm.
Now, notice what I didn't say. I didn't say, well, do you see how powerful they are? That gives you the opportunity to say yes or no. But when I say, I wonder if you're starting to recognize what is inferred, how
Yeah,
powerful they are.
exactly.
I led you for the exact, and I'm going to tell you candidly, I support political candidates that take a more holistic approach to evolution on the planet because we're all on this planet together,
Hmm.
period.
Right.
You know, that's just a reality. We're all breathing the same air. We're drinking the same water. This planet goes up in flames. We're all going up in flames.
Right.
So that's just my opinion. Take it, don't take it, whatever. But the guy in the White House right now is an expert at manipulation, which
Mm,
is an arm of persuasion and influence.
hmm.
Now, I'm not going to comment on that, but here's the thing. There are all kinds of psychological strategies. Everyone listening, you might have read before, Carrie, it's on my shelf, Robert Greene, 48 Rules of Power.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read that?
I did the blinkist of it, so it's
Okay.
cheating.
Yeah, Robert Greene, 48 Rules of Power. Read 48 Rules of Power and look at how much of that has been used or is being used right now. Why? Because we humans are susceptible to being led. We want to be led and we follow certain psychological strategies.
Mm,
And whether it be in sales, when I taught this for a living, I would ask people to sign an agreement saying they wouldn't use what they learned unethically.
mm,
Why? Because I tell people you take money out of some people's pocket unethically, the universe is going to take it right back out of your pocket. So always
hmm.
be honest and always be ethical.
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, it really is karma. Everything
Karma, it's
circulates.
exactly what it is.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
you have to operate with that integrity. And I can tell you, back in my early youth, I wasn't in integrity. And so
Yeah.
I saw firsthand the repercussions of doing things the wrong way, per se. And now I live in full integrity, and life is so much sweeter not having to look over my shoulder or feel shitty at night about a
Yeah.
deal gone wrong or anything of the sort. So I love that you mentioned that and that you had that policy of actually using the powers as a force for good, right? So let's
Yeah.
let's give the people some actual, like you said, some of these micro commitments, these leading questions is definitely one, tool in the toolbox. If you can give us a couple others when people are looking to operationalize this wisdom that you share.
I'm trying to think about that because I taught this and I used to be a ninja at it, but I haven't taught it in years. And I assume that I probably still use it subconsciously.
Yeah, you
But
do, I'm sure.
hypnotic languaging. Hypnotists use a particular language. It can be as simple as, I want, like, let's say, for example, when I was relaxing somebody in hypnosis, and I can tell they're relaxed by watching their facial structure. Their eyes are closed. And I would say something like, Carrie, I wonder if you recognized how relaxed you have become. Now, guess
Mm.
what? If you haven't recognized it, you now have been directed to recognize how relaxed you have become. Another one would be um, the more you blink, the more you blink. Carrie, the more you think about this, the more you're going to recognize this is exactly what you want to learn to build your business.
Mm.
Another one would be a post hypnotic suggestion. Carrie, later today, when we're done with our interview, you're going to be thinking about what we talked about today. And when you think about it, you're going to recognize that you want to call me because you want to learn more about it. Now, that phrase right there, you're going to be thinking about this at some point later today.
Yeah.
So I told you later today, when you're thinking about it, I planted the thought that I wanted to plant for you to think later today that you're going to want to call me to
Mm.
talk more about it.
Yeah.
Even if you don't call me, I've already planted that suggestion.
Wow. Yeah, that's ninja for sure.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that you do effectively when you do have a conversion, in my opinion, but even sometimes subconsciously or without knowing, you'll say things like this, or at least I can think
I
back
do all
to
the time. It's completely unconscious.
right.
I've got to actually, I have to be mindful to not lead people because
Yeah.
if I'm asking for somebody's opinion
Yeah.
and I want their feedback, I know that my natural propensity is to lead to get
Mm.
the answers that I want. So I'm like, okay, Jim, shut the fuck up. Don't just be careful the way you ask this question.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Ask them in a way very generically so you won't lead them to an answer that they're going to give you that's not going to help you. So yes, once we learn it, it becomes just second nature.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you have a lot of really cool things coming up. And one specifically that I know you do is this Unstuck challenge. And
Yeah.
this is something I feel like a lot of the happy hustlers out there watching and listening, they might feel stuck either personally or professionally in, some way.
Yeah.
And throughout this challenge, you actually walk people through exactly how to get unstuck and change their identity. Talk to us a little bit about this upcoming challenge and where can people go to even sign up for it?
Yeah, normally we just sold it at okay, we're all marketers, all right. Even though
Right.
I do from the heart. It's what I call my dharma,
Yeah.
meaning the transformational work working with a shaman. Dharma is my life path.
Mm,
This is what I do. But I work with a lot of business people as well at all levels. And number one, people are never stuck. Stuck is simply a matter of interpretation coming from the
mm,
identity. We're
mm,
never stuck. It's simply we're at the mercy of the interpretation that we're stuck.
mm,
But in the challenge, I just created it as a product, kind of a micro product, $97, and just sold thousands of them. But then go to jimfortin.com/happy, jimfortin.com/happy. It's a 9-day program. Now, even though I framed it, and actually one of my good friends I'd mentioned earlier, a guy named Rich Sheffrin, a
mm.
massive internet marketer,
Yeah.
was the one that's like, Jim, change the title of it because I used to call it the Be to Have Challenge.
Mm,
We don't recognize, and this is something, and I own the trademark to it now, is be to have. We must be before we can do, before we can have.
mm,
We are human beings, but people don't understand what it means to be
mm,
at a foundational level. And that's what this 9 days does, is it helps you understand what it even means to be.
mm,
Because when you understand what it means to be, then you can do anything you want, so you can have whatever you want. So
mm,
I do take an ancient wisdom spiritual approach to this. No dogma, no religion, but it's understanding the essence of being.
mm. Well, I know I'm interested. So check out jimfortin.com/happy if you guys are interested too. And let's just unpack, stay there for one more beat.
Sure.
The
I'm here
B
for you.
part, because the B part is really, like you said, the most pivotal piece to the puzzle per se.
Yeah.
Right. So how do we, in this crazy world, we were talking about it, like how, we're
Right.
both very much removed from it in many regards, but still
Yeah.
there's a lot of people in the chaos. There's a lot
Yeah.
of energy outside with the fires and the presidential election and
Right.
war looming and AI just stressing people out and the dopamine dumps from social media all the time,
Yeah.
getting
Good job.
notified of.
Yeah.
It's just like this world is so noisy, and us as mammalian brains weren't designed to handle this type of
Yeah.
interaction. It's just insane to think about how much we have to process in any given day. And so the thought of just being sometimes is great in theory, but I feel like some people might just feel so dang overwhelmed that they just don't know how to be. So break that
Yeah.
down for us.
Yeah, I'll make this simple. This is something my brother-in-law, the shaman, told me years ago. And honestly, I'm just being transparent. It took me about 10 years to really understand the gravity of it.
Mm,
And what I'm going to share is 6 words. When anybody gets this, and then I'll go into what it means to be. When people get this, it'll change their life.
mm.
You are where your attention